Capital 2, and our topic for this afternoon is keeping mainstream interesting. And we would, of course, want to welcome all of you, and we appreciate you coming. I know everyone is concerned with this area of square dancing activity. My name's Elmer Sheffield, and I'm from Tallahassee, Florida, and working with me is Jim Chomondeley from, pronounce that for me, Missouri. Florestan, Missouri, and Jerry Jestin from Texas. Right? Thank you. And what we're going to do is, Jim has done quite an extensive survey. He mailed out some survey forms and got some answers back, and some of them were, some of them were very interesting, to say the least. And but we do have a problem with our dancers after we complete classes, and there's a real gap there between class and moving dancers so quickly into the plus areas, and we need to decide if there's things we need to do, or just what do we do to keep our mainstream dancers going until they do have the desire to go further. When we finish our presentation, we would like to have some discussion with you, your views or questions, and if we can answer them, we will. If we can't, maybe someone in the room here can. But I'd like to, with Jim's permission, I'd like to start off the session and just have him kind of go over his survey that he sent out and kind of at least touch on the answers that he got back. And I think, do they have copies of this? There's copies of this in the back of the room. You'll see the questions that he mailed out, and then he compiled the answers on the second sheet that he got back. Of course, he couldn't put every answer he got back on there, but he tried to take the ones that were the majority, okay? So if you'll just pick up a copy of that and quickly reassume your seating position, we'll have him kind of go over it. And then if there's questions, like I say, we'll discuss them. And then Jerry has got some things that he will add to this, okay? So here's Jim Chomondeley.
Thank you, Elmer. If we can get seated as quickly as possible. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon, to be at the convention, and to be with such a esteemed group as Elmer and Jerry. When I was first asked to help on this committee, I really didn't know what I was going to talk about, and I accepted because I thought it'd be easy. And I found out through my investigation that keeping mainstream interesting isn't really easy. But we are here today to discuss keeping mainstream, quote, interesting, not mainstream versus +1, +2. That's not what this session is about. We must keep in mind that what is interesting to we callers is not necessarily interesting to the square dancers. We give them lessons, they buy costumes, they put up with us, they pay us, hopefully, all in hopes that when we call for them, we will be able to give them a good time. We as callers owe them our best, and we must strive to keep the interest level and the fun level at a high during the dance. This can be done by projecting fun from the stage to the dancer, which will in turn start interreaction between the callers and vice versa. In addition, the attitude of the caller must be that the mainstream dance is just as important as a +1, +2 dance, an advanced dance, or a challenge dance. Very often our ego gets in the way of giving the dancers a good dance. We like to call +1, +2, or advanced. But if we stop and think about it, mainstream is where it's at. In addition, the attitude of the caller must be extremely positive throughout his whole evening. His planning of the program is extremely important. Those of you that do not, and I'm preaching to the choir, really, I know you all do, you plan your program before you get on that stage. It's extremely important, especially in mainstream. and probably just as important as it is in challenge. And if you look at a lot of your challenge callers, their programs are written out. I'm not saying you have to write out your mainstream program the same as you do your challenge, but it's just as important. If we are limited in mainstream choreography, and I've heard callers say this, I don't have enough choreography in the mainstream area or plateau to call, think about calling +1, +2 in your mainstream dance, but by not putting a name to it, just calling it directionally. Also look at some of the advanced movements. Call them directionally. I think one of the biggest examples of this is AC-doocy. The centers trade and the ends circulate. We all call that in our mainstream program. We don't put an AC-doocy name to it. We can use a lot of the choreography tools that we have, but the main thing as far as keeping a dance interesting is to keeping the interest level up for the dancers, and that's by having fun. The practice at calling mainstream is very important to us. And I urge all of you, when you get back to your home, to start a mainstream program. You'll find it rewarding. And by getting a mainstream program going, working on styling, not on the choreography that much, but on styling and positioning, you'll find that you'll have better dancers in which you can call almost anything to. Now, as Elmer said, I ran a survey, had some very good responses, and I was a little surprised when CALLERLAB said that they only had 20 to 30% response on their surveys. CALLERLAB sent this out for me, and I had about an 80% response from the Callers Association, and I'd like to thank these people sitting right here, because I know that you had a lot to do with that, and you can give yourselves a great big hand for getting that response back to me. Those of you that have not seen the survey, of course, you should have one. I'm going to go through the question number 1. And first of all, I'd like to say that mainstream is alive and well. Mainstream is alive and well in the rural areas and overseas and outside the continental United States. Mainstream has some problems in the metropolitan areas. We have metropolitan areas that reported that they do not have a mainstream club. That every club in the area is either +1, +2, or advanced with a few challenge clubs. This is a problem. We suspected this during the survey, however, we really weren't sure. Now, the actual numbers, we didn't get to the actual numbers because some people put in percentages instead of numbers, which didn't help too much. Question 2, almost every convention has a mainstream hall, or as some put it, they have a plus hall, and the convention is mainstream, which I thought was pretty neat. Question 3, I think, was extremely interesting. This is a caller's perception of how their dancers judge other dancers and other mainstream dancers. 10 responses said that they were excellent, 26 good, and the majority of them said that the other dancers did not consider mainstream dancers as good as +1, +2. The callers' opinions were really not that different. They said that their +1, +2, their mainstream dancers should take +1, +2 as soon as possible. I don't know if this was motivated by a financial response or by the dancers. Question 5 has been knocked around here in the convention this year quite a bit. Question 5 deals with the percentage of dropouts in the 80-81 lesson period. We had responses from 10% up to 90%, with the average being 60 to 70% dropout. Now, prior to starting this survey, I thought I knew the answer to that. I didn't have a solution, but I knew the answer as to why we had so many dropouts. I had heard national callers, I've heard people at CALLERLAB come up and tell us why we had problems. We were pushing our dancers from the mainstream level into the +1, +2 too fast. We were not teaching them good enough or well enough. When we asked some of the reasons as to why people had dropped out, if you'll look at question number 6, it goes from A to Y. Those were the major reasons. A, I think, is what I really thought that it was, and I put that as number 1 so I could talk about it. That is not the highest priority that we had. Okay, that's hard to bridge the gap from graduation to club level. I think one of the reasons is that one of the major reasons that were reported is that our lessons are too long. We are asking too much of a student and then have them do too much after class to go 2 or 3 times a week to stay current in the movements. I think that this was the most revealing answer, and probably the largest percentage of the answers that dealt with this. The finances, we find the areas where they have young dancers, newlywed dancers. Finances is a great problem. Babysitting fees, example. Question 7 dealt with how we can increase the prestige of the mainstream only dancer. And I'd like to say one thing right now before I go any further. I didn't know how to refer to a dancer that dances just mainstream, because when I said mainstream dancer, they said, well, what happens if I dance, coordinate? Or what happens if I have a dance that when using coordinate in and load the boat and this type of thing? Am I really a mainstream? I said, I really don't want to hear about those, because a person that dances just mainstream really hasn't been taught those. A lot of them haven't, if they've been coming only once a month going to a mainstream club. Or if they have just gotten out of lessons, 42 lessons, where are they going to go? Is there a mainstream club where they aren't going to be clobbered with load the boat or spin chain of gears or relay the deucey, this type of thing? So I use the term mainstream only, not as a derogatory term, but as a descriptive term. You wouldn't believe the phone calls I got. It was quite interesting to hear how the mainstream callers, and we do have some mainstream callers, and God bless them, feel about their mainstream dancers. They are very jealous about them, and that's good to hear. But the consensus of opinion on question number 7 is that we must increase the prestige of the mainstream dancer. The few negative comments were from areas where they dance just mainly mainstream, and they said that their prestige is good enough right now. Okay, and I have to agree with them in those areas. It probably is. And you'll see some of the ideas that they gave me. Number 5, I think, is extremely interesting, to have caller training on how to make square dancing fun. In other words, how to be a showman, entertainer, and etc. I would like to attend one of those callers sessions. Question number 8 is the real mainstream level in your area +1, +2. 50%, and these were from the metropolitan areas for the most part, answered yes. Is the real mainstream area there is +1, +2. The rural areas almost unanimously said no. 95 answered no to the question, should we change the term mainstream to something else? And I made a mistake in the survey. I put advanced basics, and I found out later that isn't a good term. But I meant that as an example. Since I have been here at the convention, I've had several callers tell me that they would like to see that name changed. I've had a lot more say, I wish you had never asked that question. They don't want it changed. Okay, that's about all we have on the survey. It was an education for me, and I hope the survey will be an education for you. And if you have any questions after Jerry is finished, we will try and field the questions from the floor. If you do have a question, you're going to have to come up and ask it from the microphone here to the side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. We will ask that, as soon as Jerry gets through giving his presentation, we will have then a period where we can have questions and answers. And like Jim just said, you are going to have to come up and speak through this microphone we have over here so that all this can go on tape. So we'll ask Jerry Jestin to step up and give you his views on mainstream and keeping it interesting.
I think that we all agree, if you travel around at all, if you call out of your hometown, that you find that there is a problem with mainstream dances. And I really think that the illness lies on the callers. It's not the dancers. We are the leaders of the activity. The largest problem, I think, is the failure of local callers. And when I say local callers, I mean every caller, whether he makes his living at calling or whether he just calls one night a week as a hobby, are local callers. Most every caller has a home club. Many callers do not use the lists, the levels properly. They don't explain it to their dancers. If you have a mainstream club, now that's where the majority of our dancers are now. And if you're looking at making a living at it especially, or making a little bit of money on the side, that's where the majority of the dancers are. And of course, the numbers say you're going to make more money there. But I think many callers feel that when they go to a mainstream dance and they look out there and they know that there's dancers that know some of the plus moves, they feel that all of the people on the floor will know it, or else that they could use some of the plus moves, and the ones that don't know it will just sort of get pulled through by the good dancers. And I think that's a wrong attitude. I think that most callers think that to keep it interesting at a mainstream level, that they've got to call some of the favorite plus calls. Now, I think there's many other ways to keep mainstream interesting and still remember that square dancing is fun. I'm going to go through some that I wrote down, and I'll just expand a little bit on some of it, and then I hope that some of you will question what I've written down and add to them after I get done. The first thing that I feel every caller should do at a mainstream club, whether it's over a period of time, if you're just taking over a club or whatever, is use all the moves on the mainstream list before you even consider using anything else. If you're taking over a new club, a new mainstream club, or you're starting one, and the dancers that are coming out, even if there's some plus dancers that are coming and dancing with you, there's still going to be some of the dancers that come out of class that do not know all of the moves on the mainstream list. And I'll name two that you run into wherever you go, usually, and that is peel off, fan the top. Most of your dancers cannot dance that if you just go and call it to it in a mainstream dance. Now, if you're just taking over the club, start workshopping some of them. Start using some different positions on them. But use those moves and keep using them. Secondly, I think that we as callers should have themes for our tips. I don't mean you have to write it down. But if all of us have danced, and I think you've gone out and most, even callers have bad nights when you're trying to work on a tip and you're just sort of moving around the floor and there's no pattern. They're just sort of wandering aimlessly. I think that if you take a move, one move, whether you workshop it or not, use it as a theme for your tip. That the dancers have a feeling with that, and also they get to use that move from various positions. So you take fan the top. Let's do it from ocean waves, parallel ocean waves. Let's do it from tidal waves. Let's do it from two face lines. Then let's do it from facing couples, but be fair to the dancers. Start in, cue them, give them a little extra time, help them, and they'll get better, and they'll enjoy it, and it'll be different. Thirdly, One of the things in mainstream dancing that you hear complained about by any dancers that have started doing any of the plus moves is that it's boring. It gets to be boring. It gets to be the same thing over and over. Well, one way to do it, to help change the boredom, and that means that they know what the caller's going to call before he opens his mouth. They can do the move, because when you call this move, this one follows. Is in your singing calls. Don't use the same figure. Work on some figures. Figure out that you're going to get your full promenade. Work on using even just 2 figures in a singing call. Use one for the first half, for the first 2 figures, and one for the second 2 figures. Change it a little bit. And also, keep track of the various figures you used in an evening while you're calling. Don't overuse head square through, swing through, and the boys run and bend the line, and right and left through, and flutter wheel, and slide through, and swing your corner. The dancers just are not even dancing to the music at that time. They don't even have to listen to the caller. You gonna write that figure down? My fourth one still expounds on this point about calling the same sequences in your pattern. Be aware, all of us as callers, what we are calling before a move and after a move. If we have the heads lead to the right and circle to a line, do we always do a right and a left through afterwards? After a right and a left through, do we always do a flutter wheel? After a flutter wheel, do we always sweep a quarter? After a sweep a quarter, do we always veer to the left or pass through? True, they're smooth. But if we do it all the time, we're not making it interesting. We're doing the same thing over and over. We're being repetitious. One way to work on that is you got to remember that the flow has got to be there. It's got to be smooth. But you got to sit down and work on it a little bit. Analyze what can be done smoothly. What can be done and still use a variety of the moves in sequences. It doesn't hurt to memorize equivalents as long as you don't keep using it over and over and over. It doesn't hurt to use some zeros so you can stop thinking for a minute, but you just memorize it. You know you're going to get back there, but the dancers don't, and use it in various places. Use some gimmicks. Don't overuse it. Memorize some gimmicks. Remember when you use it. Don't use it 2 weeks in a row. When they start getting to know what you're going to say before you do it, it's boring to the dancers. And that's taken away from keeping it interesting. Keep track of what you're using. Another way that might help keep mainstream interesting, if you got a club that's dancing the mainstream moves very well, announce one time during the evening, you're going to have a workshop tip. And a workshop tip, remember, is supposed to still be fun. It's not a drill. This is a square dance. The quarterly selections are one possibility to use for workshops. Use them. Use that tip to workshop it from various positions. There's experimental movements that aren't on any lists that you can use for one night only. And what that does is it keeps those people that are with you on an even keel, whether they're plus dancers or A dancers or mainstream dancers. They're all learning together a new move. Explain to them that this is a new move and it's an experimental move. They may never see that move again. But everybody here is going to learn this move tonight and have fun with it tonight. The idea is don't let the dancers go stale. We want to learn. If we stop learning, we're going to go stale. That's a proven fact in education of any sort. Also, we have the other lists, the plus lists, the A lists, and even the C lists. Those are good moves there's good moves on every one of those lists. Analyze your floor. If you've got half of the people that know a lot of the plus moves, you don't go pick a move that half the people already know. Pick something off an advanced list or a challenge list. Work it. Tell them that it's on that list so they have an idea of what this level system is about. So you may see it again sometime. It's not a hard move. And one thing that I really believe in, if you're going to use a workshop tip, announce it before time, let them know that it's going to be a workshop tip, and also let them know before time that you're going to use that move the rest of the evening. One of the arguments the dancers have is that we learn something for a tip and we do it for that tip and we never see it again, even at night or ever again. At least use it that evening. Have some fun with it that night. That adds to your whole evening dances of programming. It adds to the variety. You don't have to think about various positions in that because you got a new move you can work too. That helps. Another one that Jim talked a little bit about is your programming. Work on your programming. Every caller's got to work on the programming. Think what you're going to do. Plan, have an idea ahead of time when you're going to do that workshop tip. How you want the dancers to move. Early in the evening, you know that the people are just coming in. They aren't ready to do all position moves or different position moves. So you give them a little chance. You don't do exactly the same thing, but you do easy stuff. But you make sure you change it. You got a box 1-4, head square through 4, swing through. Instead of having the boys run, let's have the boys circulate this time and then have the boys trade and the boys run. Give them time. If you go to a floor and you start out that way, don't give them time. Don't be fair to the dancers. And they're used to running after they swang through. They're all going to be halfway ran before they've realized you said circulate. Another point is use your time at the dance well. However long you are dancing in your area, the dancers come to dance. They can go visiting afterwards. They can visit between tips if there's rounds on your program, and they don't round dance. They can visit then. If they do round dance, they can sit out a tip. They don't have to dance every tip. You are there to work for the time specified for that dance. Keep the dance going. That's what the dance is for. And I really believe that you should not let a dance drag. That takes away from the whole atmosphere. Another point that Jim talked about is we as callers are there to entertain the dancers in whatever way we can. The dance is to be fun and enjoyable to the dancer, not just to the caller. And you got to keep that in mind. One idea that would help all of us is to make sure you take a cassette tape. Tape yourself every couple of months. And don't just tape yourself. Go and listen to it. Listen to the whole dance. Most of us have tape recorders you can carry in the car or whatever. You're sitting around home. Listen to it. Dance to it. Critique yourself. If you hear things that you don't like, the dancers probably don't like it either. Listen to your sequence. Listen to how you explain something on a workshop tip. It'll help you. It'll help you in how you sing. It'll help you in your programming. Change something that needs change. Don't be afraid to try something. And then listen to it again. See how it works. And then the last point I got here is if you've got a mainstream club and you're in an area where the dancers are good mainstream dancers, or it's been most of the year since you graduated a class and everybody's dancing a good mainstream dance with a good variety of position dancing in all of those moves, and some of the dancers, you know, a good percentage of the dancers are plus dancers, plus level dancers. Announce sometime during that evening a plus tip. That'll give a chance for the mainstream dancers to rest, whatever. But be fair to them. Don't take an hour. Just make it a short tip, run through a little bit of stuff, and it'll give them the feeling that they can dance it here and still have fun, give the other people a chance to see what's going on. But make sure the dancers understand the levels, explain what you're doing. We want the dancers to know, understand, question, and help us. I don't have anything else to say, and I'm going to leave it right there.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. I hope that you all have an opinion one way or the other. If you agree with the things that Jim and Jerry have said, that's fine. And if you don't agree with them, or if you have things you want to add, or if you want to tell us some of the things you do to keep mainstream interesting, we'd be glad to hear from you, because we're all interested in that same thing. The only thing is you must come forward and talk through this microphone, and we would like you to give your name before you make a statement either way. Yes, sir. You. Microphone right there.
Thank you. My name is Bob Smith. I live right here in Reno, and I must apologize for the snow. And I'm not standing in a hole. Before you say anything, Claude. Jerry hit two important things when he said, how many mainstream dances can you attend and call a fan the top, or a peel the top from a peel off from a Z? You did say a Z, Jerry, or just any kind of peel off, for that matter. And really, where does the blame lie? It lies with us as callers, because we're not doing it. Learning is repetition. If we repeat a move enough to the dancers, they will indeed learn it. There are other things that are used, such as cross run from centers. But how many of us are using ends cross run? Not very many, I would say. Partner hinge opens up a lot of very fine possibilities. Good choreography. But how many dances can we call a partner hinge? And it isn't really too difficult to teach it. Single hinges are dancers can do it standing on their ear. The partner hinge, another matter. Only because we're not teaching it, we have to face that fact.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm Scott Pierce from Folsom, California. Jerry, I'd like to challenge one of the suggestions you gave us for keeping mainstream interesting, and maybe we can hear some more comments on it afterwards. That's the suggestion you gave that sometime during the dance we have a workshop tip to introduce a new experimental to keep everybody on an even keel. I think one of the things we're talking about here is to try to keep mainstream interesting without moving on to other levels and other calls. And as a dancer, I assume you were talking about like Saturday night hoedowns, etc., as opposed to your regular weekly workshop? Okay, as a dancer, if I go to 4 dances a week with 4 different callers, that means that in addition to learning all the calls I learn at my weekly club or workshop, I have to learn a new call every Saturday night. And I think that's what we've been trying to work for the last 4 or 5 years in CALLERLAB to try to eliminate.
Thank you. I'll let Jerry answer that.
It's a good point. I honestly think that most of our mainstream dancers, unless they're dancing in a workshop to learn pluses or advances, or have just got out of lessons, unless they've just got out of lessons, are not dancing 4 nights a week. They may be dancing 2 in most places. And again, I stress it's whatever you can use at that point. And you may know your people, and you may know what you've got there, but I wouldn't overuse it either. That's just a suggestion as one possibility. And I would explain to the dancers why we're doing that. It's just something to keep people learning. Now, if you've got a group of new beginners, I wouldn't do it. If I knew that I had new beginners there, you'd have to analyze your floor at that time and decide what you've got. But if the situation arises that you have a lot of dancers there, part of the floor are already plus dancers, and there are not new mainstream dancers right out of class, and they're dancing a good level, then I would use that, but I would be careful where I use it.
Okay, we appreciate your opinion, and like I say, these are just suggestions from us too. So, I'll take you just a second, okay? I've kind of motioned to Ernie Kinney. Ernie didn't volunteer, but I've been to a dance or two where Ernie called mainstream, and I'd like him to say a word or two to you. He's unprepared or unrehearsed for this, But he knows how to call a mainstream dance and make it interesting for dancers, I'll guarantee you. And if he would just say a word or two.
A word or two.
That's it.
Thank you. I would have to concur with Scott. Teaching +1 or +2 move at a mainstream dance is not keeping mainstream interesting. It's moving into +1 or +2. If you're calling a mainstream dance, if you want to have a little fun, have the head start through and do a partner tag and a partner hinge and a single hinge and the boys run.
Did y'all get that written down, or do you want him to repeat it?
But that's mainstream, and if you're going to call in mainstream, call in mainstream. If you can't, dancers don't get bored. I'd have to disagree with Jerry on that. Callers get bored. And if you get bored with what you're doing, then you're not doing a proper job. So, make it, well, we're talking about positions, and we're trying to get that little term completely kicked out in some of our other committees. We're talking about dancing by definition. And if you dance by definition, we have no such thing anymore as standard position or common position. Or if you dance by definition, you just dance for definition. And but this committee is primarily concerned with keeping the mainstream interesting, and I, as I say, would concur with Scott that teaching a quarterly selection or anything else at a dance is not concerned with keeping the mainstream interesting. Keeping the mainstream interesting is just keeping the mainstream interesting, whether it be to you or the dancer. Your problem is with the dancer, and I guess maybe we are, some think, say we are paid to entertain the dancers. I don't think so. I think that we're paid to let the dancers entertain themselves.
Thank you, Ernie. I appreciate Ernie volunteering for that. He is the master of it. I'm sure that there are lots of other callers in here that are just as good at making mainstream interesting. It's just that I have been around him when he calls. Anybody else, any other callers here that would like to, come up and make a comment about the same thing? I see Lee Cockman back there. I'm sure he could probably add something to mainstream.
Bob Furman, St. Louis, Missouri. Some of the things that we've been saying here, and I want to add one more word to what Ernie said back there about callers getting bored. If callers are getting bored, then they're not doing their they're not doing their homework. They're not studying their movements. They're not seeing what can be done. I was working with something the other day of just taking in, without telling anyone that they were in diamonds, of using cast-off three-quarters swing to, be better if I had a square for the front to you. But anyway, take and sit down with your dolls, your checkers, whatever you use, and let your mind explore on these things. It's going to take you some time. You're not going to get there overnight. Using some, discovered some interesting ways to use Zoom. Some interesting ways to use Circulate. But just sit down at your desk or whatever you do, let your mind explore on one movement. Just one movement. Take a cast-off three-quarters. Take that movement. Sit down for an hour and just let your mind explore with your checkers and your dolls and work it. And then transfer it to dancers to see how it works after that. But you've got to do your homework. To keep the mainstream interesting, you must do your homework, and you must be sure of what you do. So, thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Just 1 second. Fred, if you will, come on up, but hold on just a second. I want to get, there's a man here with us that Probably, well, I know he can call any level of square dancing if he wants to. But I'd like to get Lee Copman just to give us a word or two about keeping mainstream interesting, because I know he can also do it very well. So how about giving Lee a nice hand?
Lee who? I think that sometimes we don't investigate the possibilities on what's available to us, with the figures we're working. And so many times we kind of take the easy way out, because we say, well, now they'll be able to get through it. There's no hassle. If you do a curly Q, is walking dodge on this? Huh? Okay, yeah, I'm not too sure. Yeah, but I'm looking at this thing here, and I see Dixie Style is on the setup, and I see Spin Chain Through is on the setup and everything else. And how many of us call Spin Chain Through and the end circulate twice? Did you do that? All right, did you ever think about calling Spin Chain Through, have the ends turn back and circulate once? Adds a little bit of juice to it, you see, and you get their attention immediately. You call walk and dodge. Most of the time they call curly Q walk and dodge because it equals a lead to the right. There are things where you can set up where you can just have center 4 work and dodge from certain two-space lines. And if you're worried about whether or not they'll be able to do it, as long as you get the boy to walk and the girl to dodge over, you'll be in good shape. I see single hinges on here. You don't have to be in certain ways to do single hinges. If we get a square here, I think we can work some things out. Can we get a square of 8 people that are mainstream dancers?
You'll give us some quick volunteers there. We'll get this on the tape, and that way we'll be sure and sell plenty of these tapes. I really am interested in seeing the 2 spits and a blow.
Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. Let's how many people call Dixie Style to an ocean wave? It doesn't seem to be any problem on that. Have the heads square through 2 and meet a girl on the slide through. Most of the time you'll hit it right from here. You call it right. Don't do this. You call it right and left through to a Dixie Style to an ocean wave. Is that correct? That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for variety and how to make things just a little bit more interesting, did you ever think about this possibility? Everybody do a right and left through and roll the girl with a half sachet. Let's have the center 4 only do a right and left through, and just you 4 do a Dixie Style to an ocean wave. Now, there shouldn't be any trouble there. The girl's on the right. You had some nice formations there, didn't you? In that wave, do a left swing through. Well, the other star through, in California twirl. Now, we have some nice things here. There isn't anything here that a mainstream dancer shouldn't know. Is that correct? How many call pass through at a mainstream level? We've done that. Any 2 facing couples. Notice the girls are facing. Is that correct? As far as I'm concerned, this is still within the framework of the mainstream picture. The girls that are facing each other pass through. That's not too hard, is it? All the girls run around the guy. The 4 in the middle swing through. Same 4 recycle. We're in pretty good shape. Now here we've taken some basics that we've known, and instead of using it from a standard situation with just 2 parallel waves, we've isolated the 2 in the center. We've tried it, and we saw 2 girls that were facing. And what you have to do in order to be able to create some of these things, if you can't do it instantly and sight call it right away, which is hard to do, then put your checkers down and see what possibility does exist. The thing that you have to realize is this. When you're trying to create choreography, if you call an unusual situation and something exists that'll be easy for them to identify, call it. I'll show you what I mean. Have the centers pass through. Are the girls facing each other? Are the boys facing each other? You could all say pass through, which I don't want you to do. But suppose we just had the boys pass through. Why don't you do that? That's not unusual. They should be able to do that. That's easy to identify a boy from a girl. Do we have trades on this? Do we have a roll on this, or is that off the list? Oh, that's terrible. Okay. All right, with the girl you have, do a partner trade. Quarter in to face that girl, and you got a line of 4. That may not fit. If they don't know quarter in, just tell them what to do. Don't make a big deal out of it because it's not on the list. You see? But here we had a situation, which I showed you, where we just took the center 4 that did this business of doing a Dixie style to an ocean wave. We had it set up where 2 girls were facing. Now, if you can't sight this, then put your checkers down here, see what some of these possibilities, just take that Dixie style to away, and see if you can memorize or write something down. Your dancers will love you for it. No problem at all. Let's have everybody pass through, do your turn back. Star through. That's good. Center four, slide through, and the same four, touch a quarter. Now, we've been in these situations before, but most of the time you probably recall a walk and dodge, so you can leave them to the right and circle to a line of four. But you have another situation here where the girls are facing, and they can pass through too. That doesn't seem to be a problem. Why don't the girls pass through? Well, you have a problem here right now because two people have a little mini way four in the same kind of a situation as the outside people are, so you'll have a column formation. Well, the easiest way to do that is to have the center four slide through. Do that. And then touch a quarter while the others trade. All right. Does anybody know why I had the others trade? Timing. Right. Keep everybody busy. Keep them on their toes. And that adds a little variety to the program. Keeps them interested, and they know that there are certain things you expect of them. Now, here, all we dealt with was a trade and a pass-through. But these are the kind of things that you can add, the kind of things you can look for if you want to add variety to the program. And that's not hard to do. Center four, walk and dodge. The others turn back. All the boys that are facing pass through. You got nice things here. This is not a problem here. The center four, do a partner trade. Quarter in to face the girl and star through while the others cloverleaf. Those who did the star through, California twirl. And the same four slide through. And you're starting to play with some very simple figures. Not hard, but if you can't cite it, then look at some of the possibilities and write it down. What other figures? Oh, here, let's take this. Let's have the center four pass through. Most of the time, when spin chain through is called, the ends circulate twice. And why do you do that? So it times it out, keeps everybody is busy. But I like to say spin chain through. I call circulate twice, but many times I'll say do a spin chain through. Go ahead. Have the girls turn back. Girls circulate one position. That times out just as well. Do a wheel and deal. Roll the girl with a half sachet. Pass through. The center four only boxed it out, the others cloverleaf. Or whatever we're doing. Center four slide through. You have a problem here. Two people are half sachet and two people are not, but you could use this to your advantage. Centers pass through. Just the boys are facing. Pass through. Why not? Hardly anybody will attempt to do that at a mainstream level, and you really should consider it. This is really not hard to work with. With a girl, you have to do a partner trade. Quarter in to face the girl. Then you're functioning. I don't know if that's a help to you, but this is the way I like to think of variety in terms of the mainstream level. And you don't need new figures, even though you have guys writing them all the time. Don't pay attention to that. That's not a factor. It's still important to have look, you can talk about, if I get off the track, lots of people say, well, there's just too many new figures. Well, use what you feel you're comfortable with and what your dancers will like. I mean, if you didn't touch a new figure, you wouldn't have a flutter wheel. You wouldn't have a scoot back. You use them, and they're good for you. They're good for the dancers. The hottest move to come out is bounce, by the way. You'll see that in a little while. But in any event, I don't know if I've helped in any way. Have I, Elmer? Huh? Okay.
We appreciate it. Okay, Fred.
Well, Lee touched on what I wanted.
Give your name.
Oh, excuse me. Frederick Reuter from Tifton, Georgia. Lee touched on what I wanted to say, but I don't see how you can separate keeping the mainstream interesting from programming. Write it down, get it in the book, and when you want to put a little spice in your program, look at your book. That's all there is to it. Sometime you ought to try a cast-off three-quarters from lines end to end. Ed Gilmore did it. He called a promenade and spread. Sides move up, remember? Cast-off three-quarters. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. I wasn't dancing back then.
Ed who?
All right. Who wants to be next? I'm sure that some of you have got something you'd like to say about keeping this interesting. Thank you.
I'm Larry McBee from Riverside, California. I knew Ed quite well as well. Tremendous gentleman. The point I was observing a little earlier, we're indicating choreography. basically to make a mainstream dance enjoyable and interesting, which is correct. And I'm glad that Lee got up. I'm impressed. I may write you.
It works cheap, too.
Right. But the thing I was mentioning is the figures that you're using, are these going to be fun for the dancers? We're looking at, well, explore all the figures you can. That's fine to keep the caller from getting bored. That's okay, too. But is it fun for the dancers? To me, that's the main concept to look at. The dancers, you know your dancer that you're working with, probably. You know what you can get away with and what you can add to as you gain their confidence and say, okay, we can do it together. Now let's kind of have some fun and do this with that and do this and the other thing. Different positions, different formations, tandem squares, progressive squares, mini squares, this type of thing for your particular dancer. But the whole key there that I was quite interested in, and I'd like some more comment if somebody has something on that, rather than just figures to make the dance interesting. That's a means of having an enjoyable dance and saying hello to the nice people that are at your dance. And to me, that's very important, keeping the dance fun. Are these figures going to be fun for the dancers? I can see some of the stuff that Lee did would be a lot of fun. It's going to keep me interested, but I'm going to have to try that with my dancers. Thank you.
All right. Next volunteer. Okay, let Jim make a, come on, but let Jim make a comment.
Come on up here. I'd like to make a comment, and I have to agree with you. And I think what we often forget is what's interesting for a caller and somebody that is into choreography is not really interesting for a dancer, and they don't really care as long as they're having a good time. Thank you.
One of the things that strikes my mind is the thing that I read across the head of the main table up there when we started the main session, the first session. The one over on the left says CALLERLAB is mainstream. The name of the session here, I think, is keeping fun in mainstream. Keep the mainstream interesting. The only way you can keep mainstream interesting to mainstream dancers is for them to be satisfied with themselves. And that, I think, is the only thing that I see the matter with the level program that we have today. Back when we started in 1954, my caller told me that dancing, square dancing, was for everybody and it was fun. We, for years, who danced periodically, we didn't dance 6 nights a week. We looked down our nose at the people who thought they were better than we. And we have now allowed ourselves to turn this around and look down upon the base of our activity. And I think that we need to, as callers, spend a little more time explaining to our mainstream dancers that they are maybe the elite. That if they do their thing and learn their basics, they are prepared to do what those other 2, 3, or 4 levels are doing just as soon as they have enough time to do it. And I think we don't spend enough time telling our people that just because they're mainstream dancers, they are not at the bottom of the heap. They're still doing what we're supposed to be doing with square dancing. We're supposed to be enjoying it. And that is the bottom line. It's also the top line.
Would you state your name for you?
Harold Parker from the state of Washington.
Thank you. Come on, Lee.
I deal with advanced dancers, better than 300 dancers a year. And I've never been in a situation where an advanced dancer looks down upon a mainstream dancer. I've never seen it done. I think more than likely it probably works the other way.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Well, that's good. We created a good thing here. That's good.
Yeah.
Let's say the people that I deal with, they don't feel that way.
And fun is an ambiguous thing. I mean, 100 squares don't show up in an advanced room in Seattle and not have fun. Or 60 squares don't show up in a C1 room and do not enjoy themselves. Yeah.
They may show up at that dance, but do they show up at mainstream dance?
Let me say this to you. they've all started at mainstream. They started at beginners. Let me just backtrack a little bit. As far as I'm concerned, this business of saying high and low is probably a mistake. I think what we should concern ourselves with is interest level. And their interest level happens to be advanced. And there are just so many days a week that you can go out to dance. And what you do is, if you're involved in advanced or challenge dancing, whatever the case is, and you look at the calendar and you have 2 or 3 days to go out to a dance, and this is what your interest is, then that's where you're going to involve yourself. That doesn't mean that they don't have any respect for the mainstream dancers or the beginner class. They know that they started. I see these people all the time. And I have a very strong feeling for the entire movement. The whole spectrum is important. You mentioned the business of, where is the fellow that was just here? Harold, you mentioned the business about CALLERLAB is mainstream. I can't tell you how upset I was when I saw that sign, because CALLERLAB is not mainstream. CALLERLAB is excellence in dancing, understanding. CALLERLAB is an entire spectrum, and that's going to be a matter of discussion at our Board of Governors meeting. I objected to that theme vehemently. CALLERLAB is square dancing, it's training of callers, that's what it is. It's not mainstream. There's an interest out there. It's growing, and it's our responsibility to concern ourselves with that interest. And if somebody wants it, you know, I hear lip service all the time. I was just in a room very close to ours where somebody says, there's dancing for everybody. Everybody should be taken care of. We hear that all the time. But then are we off the, okay, let's pass on this.
Yeah,
but I just,
go ahead and finish.
It's one thing to give lip service to it and say that we're interested in all levels of dancing, and then another say it's no good for us. It's bad for the activity. My feeling is, my philosophy has always been, if somebody is doing mainstream and they want to move along to advanced, let them do it. If they're going to be happy at it and we can service them, then service them. And they're there because they are happy, not because they're unhappy.
Okay, I think we all agree with that. Basically, maybe not everybody, but I do. There's 2 of us. So we'll get back to the mainstream, keeping it interesting. Come ahead.
My name is Vicki Blanc from Huntington Beach, and I'm mostly interested in mainstream because that's basically my limits. But I think it gets right back to programming, and there's a guy in here that kind of taught me a little bit about programming, and I went through one of his schools. You might know him, Bob. And another guy had a good seminar, and his name was Ken Bauer, and he said that when you build a tip, you know, it's good to have a theme, but know when to back off. In other words, you give them a little easy stuff, and then about halfway through, you throw them a little interesting material like Lee was doing, then back off and give them a little breathing room a little bit more, and then by the end of the tip, finish it where they try not to make any mistakes, and so that they come out right. And then get through your singing call without making a mistake.
All right. Anyone else got a comment they'd like to make? Come ahead. State your name, please.
Bob Castro, also from Southern California, Whittier area. One of the things I played with, and I have not heard mentioned in any of the seminars yet, was lines of 3. Has anybody done anything with lines of 3? For instance, head ladies chain 3/4, side gent courtesy turn them, roll away with a half sachet. Head gents pass through, turn right, walk behind 3 people, hook on the end. You have a 1P, 2P line. I played with this theme a little bit and had also 2 girls together, 1 guy in that line of 3, 2 boys, 1 girl in that line of 3. Several different ways to handle this line of 3. For a new kid on the block, I've just barely made the 3 years to come to CALLERLAB this year. These figures are published in American Square Dance magazine and the Southern California Callers Notes, if you really want to get the whole picture on them. But it added a lot of variety. I've used this figure in both +2, and last Saturday I had the nerve to try it at a halfway dance, and I worked in both places. Got quite a few comments on the set of figures from both ranges. So I think it fits very well into mainstream for a variety. Okay. Thank you. All right, can I have my square back?
That's something that we should have mentioned, too, earlier while he's getting his square together, is that if you're looking for, to keep your mainstream interesting, there's lots of good note services that have good mainstream figures that have different setups and things. So you might look into that, too.
All right, now, just on the surface, I went through that real quick just to show you how this is set up, but there's a lot of things you can add into here. Let's have the head ladies chain 3/4 to the side gent. Side gent courtesy, turn them and roll away, half sachet. All right, lines of 3 go up to the middle and back. Lonesome boys go into the middle and back. Are you from Southern California, anybody? Lonesome boys do a do-sa-do. Now, Lonesome Boys do a Highland fling like our Southern Californians do, and you don't know how to do that, right? Yeah, this gets very exciting in Southern California. In fact, if I am introducing this tip, I say it's going to get a little exotic, and if they do that Highland fling, I say that's a little more exotic than I wanted. All right, lines of 3 go up to the middle and back. Lines of 3, you do a do-sa-do. Now you can add a little bit more in here. Head gents go into the middle. Pass through, turn right, walk behind 3 people, hook on the end of a line of 4. Go 8 to the middle and back. And we got our 1P, 2P. Do a right and a left through, and a half square through, and a U-turn back, and a right and a left grand. By the way, you know that most of those left Alaman figures, if you do a U-turn back, you can do a right and left grand right away and say, oh! All right, let's have the side ladies chain straight across and roll away half sachet. Now the head boys go into the middle and back. Pass through, turn right, walk behind 1 man, squeeze into the middle of a line of 3. Now just the end, star through, make an arch, head lady dive through and chain 3/4. Now what happened? I just rotated that square. Everybody stop right there. You just rotated your square, I think. Right?
We'll keep going.
If you want to write to Southern California Callers Notes, I'll see you get a copy. In American Square Dance, it was printed first in February. One of the figures was printed in February. And it had an error in it, so I wrote to Stan and told him he had an error in it and added 2 or 3 more sequences in there. So they've been publicized, and if you would like a copy, I'll make sure you get one. Thank you, everybody.
Hold your square over there for a second. I think Ernie wants to call the tip.
All right. You're going to show me some more, right, Ernie? No, I'm not going to call a tip. I'm going to give you something I stole from someone. I researched this. 1 and 2. Who's 1? Is this the heads right here? 1 and 2. To make it a little better for the people out here, let's call this 1 over here, and I'll move. Okay. No, this will be 1. Yeah, to make it better for you guys. 1 and 2. Do it right and left through. New 2, old 4. Go forward and back. Do it right and left through. 2 ladies chain. I may have to criticize you a little right here. All 4 couples a half sachet. 4 for 4 rolled away, didn't they? We had one that didn't. One that didn't roll away, well, she rolled. 4 for 4. So we're not teaching a half sachet if we don't do it, are we? We must teach a half sachet because it's a move within itself. A half sachet is not a roll away. It's a no hands movement, and it's merely a slide across and no change of facing direction ever. You're all in that position now. New, you're all half sachet. You're all half sachet. New number 2. Go across the square and split that pair around 1, make a line of 4. I use this in class as soon as they're far enough along to do it. Go forward 4 and back. New number 1. Go across the squares, flip that pair around one, make a line. Go forward and back. Forward again and stand pat right there in the middle. 4 on the sides, bend your line. Get your left hand ready. Start with the left, do a left square through 4. 4 in the middle, bend your line. Pass through. Left out of the man.
It's amazing. We appreciate that. Hold your square out there.
Hold your square.
We'll all be using that next week. We thought maybe while we got this square up here, would some of you, maybe there's some of the newer callers or older callers, not in particular age, but experience, would you like to see what you can do with, for instance, the three in one line over there like we had a while ago from I believe it was Harold set up there with the head ladies chain 3/4. Yeah, y'all will be the heads. Go ahead and be heads there. Yeah. And roll her away whether you want to or not. Now, how about a volunteer from some of the callers that can show us some things you do with this, okay?
Okay.
So, yeah,
come on down here.
You better come up here or we won't be able to use it next week. Now, keep in mind that, guys, that what we're looking for is ways to keep mainstream interesting without bringing in a lot of...
I'm sorry. All right, that's good enough.
I'm glad you didn't say anything ugly.
I was about to back out and you said mainstream. All right. I'm going to... the 6 touch a quarter. I have to back out. I use extend. And that's not mainstream. To extend to a column.
Have them extend. We won't.
Okay, you won't bother it? All righty. From here, your step straight ahead would do it fine. All right, here we have a standard, same as if we column in the thing. You do anything you want to with it. If you're going above it, you can go coordinate anything you want, but it's an easy way to set it up and an easy way to get into the column.
Okay.
How am I going to get out of it? I didn't set you up. I wish I had them. Boys, okay, boys. Okay, circulate once, boys run. And that's your corner. Alaman left, come back and talk. If I'd have set you up, knew who I was citing to, it'd be fine.
Did he get you back with the right partner?
Here, Lee Kaufman.
We'll keep that one, too.
Just going along with those lines, this is a perfect way to find out or how to deal with looking for variety in the columns of 3. Let's have the heads just lead to the right and circle the line, if you will, okay? Had everybody here touch a quarter, just for now. And for our purposes here, do 1/2 of an all-8 circulate. All right, now you have your column of 6 there that you see right there. There's no problem on that. Now, I don't know can we call half circulation mainstream? Is that a problem or is that not a problem? Do we agree on that?
If you explain them, they're not a problem.
Okay. So we have a half to circulate. But this goes along with trying to find out what we have and what we can deal with some of the basic formations that a mainstream dancer can use. Now, you had your setup, which was great. That was good, and I hope they remember that. And whatever Ernie had was also super on that. And let's take another look at what some of the possibilities are. Here you have a column of 6. Let the column of 6 work only in the middle and circulate. Do that. That's good. Now, besides, most of these things that you might see, to get them out of this would be to quarter in those 3, face, and then join 16. Well, you could also do this, which is a little unusual. Let me show you something that I use from this, which can be used at a mainstream level. Watch this. The center 2 boys of that column hinge with the right hand. Now, you have a very unusual formation here. And let me show you. The other 2 people in the column that are holding the girl, identify yourselves, okay? Just you 4 walk and dodge. There you go. That's a little unusual, isn't it? Those 2 only do a partner trade, face the girl, and back away. The other girl pick up the guy, make a 2-face line, wheel and deal, and pass through, squeeze between those 2 and run around the ends.
and you got a line of 4. Now, what we did at that point is we just had the center 2 only hinge, and one of the important things that you should realize is this. Let me show you something when you're looking for variety in choreography. Touch a quarter here, because this is unusual for a mainstream dancer. And do an all-8 circulate once, and a half more, okay, just for now, okay? The center 2 boys hinge, all right? All right. Can you undo that? Can you back up again, unhinge again? And do me a favor, back the whole column up, get them into another column, all right? Yeah, that's pretty good calling, Lee Calvin. Very good. All right. Just get into a column, all right? Keep quiet here, man. Do it all 8 circulate once. Go ahead. And a half. All right? Now, the center 6 only. I'm talking to you. Just to you 4, okay? Do me a favor and do another half of a circulate in the middle. Half of 6, okay? Look what we created here, this kind of a thing. Now, your dancers know columns, and if they know the half circulates, you have things that you can work out here at this point here. Can anybody see what a possibility is here? Who can tell me what they could do to get out of this?
Center 4 walk and dodge.
You got the center 4 that could walk and dodge. That would be great. This is not hard for a mainstream dancer to do. Let's see what happens. You suggested the center 4 walk and dodge. Why would that be a good idea to have them do a walk and dodge now? You have a very unusual setup here. These 2 people are half sachet. They're nervous. There's no question about that. They've never in their lives seen a formation like this. But the center 4, what could they do? Could they walk and dodge? Is that an easy walk and dodge for them? Okay, let me make this point when you're trying to create variety in your program. If you create an unusual situation, don't follow it up with another unusual situation, see? Because this is a problem now. That's right. The center 4, let's see what will happen. Walk and dodge. Okay, that's pretty. There's no problem there, is there? No problem at all. What else could we do to normalize this kind of a situation? This is terrific choreography. If you want to write down a sequence that includes this, you probably could develop a short sequence. Huh? The outside could do a partner hinge. Don't do it. That's a possibility. What else? Girls fold it nice. Now you're thinking, you see? And this can be called right in time to the music. You got to think fast, but it can be called right in time to the music. You can fold the girls, they can star through, and that'll normal it great. Let's have these end girls fold the star through with the guy. Go ahead, star through. And you got a beautiful setup there. That's not a problem. And we went from a very unusual situation into a normal situation. Slide through here. Touch a quarter. Everybody here circulate once and a half. Okay, look at the center 6 here. Let's have the 2 boys hinge in the middle. Now you got just a hinge, just a hinge. All 4 girls work with each other. Walk and dodge. Why don't you do that? That's not hard to do. You can get that. They probably will not break on that. They'll look around because they're not sure you know what you're talking about, but they'll get that. They'll get that. Girls do a partner trade. Face each other and back away. Boys, check a 2-face line. Technically, that's not right, but there's no reason with that. You could do that. And there is a 2-face line there. Boys do a wheel and deal. Pass through, squeeze in. You got a beautiful space there. Run around the girl, and you got good choreography. Pass through. Let all the boys fold to face the girl. Star through. And then bend the line. Let me show you one other thing before when we look at... Touch a quarter here for 1 minute, okay? Everybody circulate once.
A quarter more.
And do another half a circulate, okay? Let's have the boys hinge in the middle. If you train your dancers to do is chase, that's no good here, right? That's a bad thing, huh? Okay. All right, square your set. I want to show you something. Is substitute on here? Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to show you something. All right. I've done this with mainstream dancers. Have the head start through. Does everybody know substitute? There's no problem on that. All right. This is a normal substitute. All right. Substitute. Do that. You're going to get upset at this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. Touch a quarter in the middle. Are you aware of the fact that there's a lateral substitute? And it's not on any list, and nobody will know about it unless you go to a Lee Copman dance? Watch. The center 4 drop hands. And your lateral substitute is to slide out while the others come into the center. Is that clear? You're going to leave each other. Ready? Do a lateral substitute. Center 4, touch a quarter, and you got a 2-face line. Now, you could call that in a mainstream dance. You'll probably lose them, but you get them the second. You guys, that's okay. That's a risk factor I would be willing to take. It's a risk factor, and I don't think it's a big deal. Do a Ferris wheel. Let's have the boys touch a quarter. Now that you know it, boys, do a lateral substitute. Good. Boys face in, girls touch a quarter. Girls lateral substitute. Boys come into the middle, swing through. Girls face in. Boys extend. I bet you all use lateral substitutes when you go home next, okay? Good.
Yeah.
Short time back in February, we were doing, and from a zero, or excuse me, from line, touch a quarter, and then circulate once and a half, which gives you the two girls, boy on the end. Having the girl substitute over the boy sitting down up in the center.
Yeah, well, you know, we run out of the mainstream ball. You're substituting out of a triangle, which is really not on this list. That'll be a problem. Okay?
Let's stay off of that, okay?
I love triangles, too.
Okay, Jerry's got something he wants to say.
Will you square up here? I just want to show a couple things, too.
Thank you, Lee.
I want to reiterate what Lee said. These are great, but don't overuse it. We've got to remember dancer success. Don't stack them. Use them to keep it interesting, all right? This is just a couple easy ones that you may find helpful. If you do, that's fine. Heads, go in and face your corner. We're just forgetting about square through, okay? You're coming out of the middle. Make a right-hand star halfway. Couples veer to the left. Veer to the left as a couple. So we're just doing a right-hand star, just a halfway. Couples circulate. They'll fudge it like Lee said the first time, but then they'll do it. Bend the line. Pass through, do a wheel and deal. Center square through 3/4. Make a left-hand star halfway and veer to the right as couples. And couples circulate. All right? Bend the line. It's smooth. It's a star. It's star stuff like Ed Gilmore used. All right? Okay, and one more thing. Pass through and a wheel and deal. Centers do a right or left through and roll away while the others divide and check your lines. You won't, because you're going to give them. If you see they're having a problem, give them time. Lines go forward and back, and we've given them the time, and they will adjust to those lines. And they should be teaching divide, right? Okay. Those are just two little ideas that might help you.
What time is it, Jim? What time is it? 4:12.
Square up. Square up.
Are you serious? Really?
This is Ernie. Ernie wants you to do
And then
this.
what?
What do you want to do after that?
He says he wants you to square your sets and do a side space, grand square, 5 steps.
5 steps, count them.
1,
2, 3, 4, 5. Lines. Line.
Right and left through. Star through. Yellow rock.
What list that on?
Oh, that's not on the list. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, keeping it interesting, I guarantee you. Brian, would you like to? Let's add one more thing here before we get off on kind of wrap it up here. Give us your name before you.
I have a couple of easy things on lines of 3. Brian Hotchkiss from Australia.
Your name?
I've always wanted to be on the same bracket.
Serial number?
As Lee Kaufman. And this was the only way I figured I could do it. Some very easy stuff. Brian Hotchkiss, Australia. Head ladies take both men up to the middle and back. 6 of you pass through. You turn back. Side ladies take both men up to the middle and back. 6 of you pass through, do a U-turn back. And at that stage, you've got the square back zeroed out. But you can have the men do the same thing. Head men take both girls up to the middle and back. 6 of you pass through, you turn back. If we have the side men do the same thing, the square is then squared up again. But you can also do this. Side men take both girls up to the middle and back. 6 of you slide through. Everyone left a la mande. Come back and promenade.
That's perfect, except I'm not sure if they do the slide through.
That's a slide through by definition.
All right. I think you can have a seat, dancers. We appreciate it. How about a nice hand for our dancers?
For the dancers.
Okay, guys,
really, I think that we've covered about everything we had sort of planned to put out there to you. We just want to put the idea in your head, really, that keeping mainstream interesting really, in the end, falls back on the caller. And if we're going to keep mainstream interesting, it's going to take some homework, and you can take the basics just like you've seen here today, and you can just do wonders with them, and you can make people think they're dancing way above what they're dancing, and they're having fun doing it. And keep it interesting for them and keep it fun. That's what it's all about, really, when it gets right down to the end. Has anybody got anything they'd like to add or say or tell us we're wrong or whatever before we wrap this up? Okay, hold just a second. We have... Yeah, that was the wrong thing to say. Come on forward if you want to make a statement, okay? Be sure and give your name.
My name is Ralph Rowland from Tacoma, Washington. I went to one of Lee's workshops here a couple of years ago, and he started this process of thinking and doing these things. Working with dolls, I found out, was a real problem. But if you'll sit down and write all this stuff out, you go back and say, hey, one more little move at that spot sets up something real strange, work from there, and get your imagination and your mind stimulated a little bit. It's really surprising what you can come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Your name?
I'm Don Montier from here at Reno, and I want to say that this has been one of the most interesting sessions that I have attended at CALLERLAB, where you can get a group of people, and have men like on this panel and Lee and the people that have come up and presented this thing and kept it in the mainstream line that was advertised. I think this is what we need more of. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. And we do come ahead. We do sincerely appreciate Ernie and Lee, the volunteers that we had there that went through these things for us, and the other callers that stepped forward.
I'm Bob Casto again for the tape. Another thing, and this gentleman that was just up here reminded me of, the way I work out any figures is I draw them out with the little squares and circles with a 1 and 2, 3 and 4 in those little squares and circles. Then as I go through, I'm trying to theme a tip, for instance, and I'm drawing this out. You can do this at coffee break time at work or anything else, and you'd be surprised how much you can work out in, say, 15-minute coffee break if you aren't drinking the coffee. Anyway, I draw it out, and as I go along, I say, that looks good right there. I can do something right there. I'll put a little slash by that spot that looked interesting, but I follow through on my theme tip. Then I'll go back and I'll look at that slash, say, what was I thinking of there? And I might make a little zero from there or some other thing. But I find out that it works a lot better for me to introduce variety and to follow my theme to write it out instead of just working with the dolls, because I can work with the dolls. I write down, what I did with the dolls, and I get them back in. But I miss those little spots where I could do something a little more interesting, like sometimes you might have the girls facing each other or the boys facing each other or different choreography arrangements that it might be interesting to do something right there that you might, and when you go back and check your notes, you know where you're at, and you can go right from there.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, come ahead, one. Give us your name.
I'm Whitey Ahmed from Minnesota. I do quite a bit of work with the 4 boys and 4 girls in one wave, and if it works good. And the dancers, I do it with my mainstream, and I also do it with my plus. For example, I have couples 1 and 2 roll away with a half sachet, and the head square through and step to an ocean wave, and have the ends circulate. I got 4 boys and 4 girls in an ocean wave, and you can do all kinds of things out of that. You can swing through, and you can have the centers run around the ends and Ferris wheel, and the centers step through, and you got them back in your waves, and it's easy to get out of. All you have to do is have the ends double circulate, and you got them back in the 1P, 2P. You got 2 boys, and you got 4 friends in one line, and you got the boys run, you got back in the 1P, 2P line. And I do a lot of that in my all position in my plus. For example, if I set up that, I can have those facing out, run around those facing in, and load the boat. You have 4 boys in one wave and a line and 4 girls in the other. And I do quite a bit of that, and it works well. It's very easy. If you just remember, you have to know the get out, which is just have the ends circulate twice, and you're right back in business.
Thank you. Okay, we appreciate you attending the session, and we do hope that you've gained something from it, and that will be the end of this. And be sure to buy the tape if you want to listen to it again.